who are you? Are you using critical thinking here for yourself, or are you just giving up decision-making ability to something over here? Now that's where I'm finding AI has been the biggest problem, is when people give up the creative ability to make decisions using AI. It's one thing to gather data, it's another thing to gather information. But when you say, what should we do, or what is the best route here, and then you take it and run with that, that is something that I think we're gonna watch more and more here is gonna come back and bite us. And I don't care if it's what color you should paint your house, to what it is, a medical decision you should make for a family member that you love.
Welcome back, everyone, to Life at 10 Tenths, where we inspire you to live at the pinnacle of your ability and purpose. We are back. Garrett Fry is here. Matt Pinelli, that's me. I'm here, and we're here to help you guys eliminate burnout in your life. That's what we like to do. This is what we help hundreds of people with in our program. And so if you want to check us out, go to 10tenths.co and see all the available options there for you to join us inside our community, because we're building an incredible community of awesome people. And we believe that you are one of those awesome people, since you are listening to the podcast. So, and if you just download our app for free, you can actually go and comment on the podcast and interact with Garrett and I, which is super fun. We love communicating with you guys. So we have a fun episode today, Garrett. This is kind of be and this is a really interesting tool, because we've talked about AI a lot. We love AI, and this story is very interesting because there's some red flags that we need to also make sure that we're addressing when it comes to some of these tools and systems out there. So good morning to you, sir.
Good morning, sir. We've I look like I've been crying. Matt and I were laughing. We were laughing really hard before we hit the record button. So we're doing well this morning.
Which, if you want to see Garrett look like he's crying, go over to YouTube. We know that we have like thousands more people who are listening on audio than watching on YouTube, which is typical with a podcast. But if you go to your YouTube channel, hit the subscribe button and join us, because we now go live every now and then, and the lives happen on YouTube. We will post those on the audio feed, but if you want to join us live, you're going to have to be a member of our YouTube community, or a subscriber, Garrett, not a member. You just hit the button and it's just a free.
It's just a button. It's just, all you got to do is hit the button. It'll subscribe you. So we're going to have some fun today. There's a conversation that I had on a coaching call here the other day, and for the sake of everybody, because this is still in the moment of playing out, we're going to leave the city out of this. We're going to leave the agents out of this. We're just going to talk about the situation at hand. And I'm going to explain the situation that's going on. And this will give Matt and I some fun things to talk about. But I'd also love to hear your feelings about this, maybe your experiences about this, because I even talking to this agent even more, they've reached out to other lenders and people, and they're like, oh my gosh, we're hearing about this happen all over the place right now. And I think this is an important thing. So again, whatever we talk about here, if you have an opinion, a comment, an experience, throw it into the comments, throw it into our chat, go into the actual YouTube. You can make the comments on there, and we want to know. I want to know what your experiences are with this. But here's the story. So we were coaching yesterday, and she says, I got to talk about this. This is a real situation, real time going on right now. She's representing the buyer. They have just submitted an offer on a property. This property just hit the market. This property is getting all types of activities. From the listing agent side, they're like, we're getting a showing about every hour that this property hit the market. We have lots of interest in it. And she was calling to say, we're submitting an offer. And he was saying, that's great. We potentially have lots of offers coming in, so just the heads up. Price for the property currently right now, it is listed at $425. All right. And their offer that they're submitting is $435. So they're going a little bit over. They know what's going on. They're all in. They're very excited about this property, by the way. All of a sudden, the listing agent calls them back and says, all right, have a little bit of a change of plans here of what's kind of going on. My clients have decided to pull the home off the market, and they're going to relist it again. And they're going to relist it at $525. Again, original list price was $425, and they're putting it on for $525 now. And he lightly let out that they went and did some research using AI, and AI said this should be the price of the property. Now, I'm assuming, this is my own because we don't know what's happening on, and the listing agent's only going to share so much. And that's, as you should. It should not be going, here's the whole thing.
I probably wouldn't even share that much.
I probably wouldn't even have shared that much, but he did share a little bit. And you got to figure from the seller's standpoint. You have a seller here that's going, oh my gosh, we put our home on the market. They're excited to sell. And we have, there's so much activity. Our door, we're not even able to go into our house. We haven't been able to be there for 48 hours because there's just showing after showing after showing. And now we got offers being told they're coming in. Do you think we listed it for too low? And I'm just playing what might have happened here. Do you think we listed it for too low?
I think it's natural for a seller to feel that way. Particularly depending on how you're prepped about what's about to happen.
So more data. So we have more data here that's now been given, because I sat down with the agent who's representing the buyer. And one, as I said, submit your offer. I don't care if it's $525. I said, submit the offer, make sure that offer goes in. She's like, done. That's already happened. Offers on their table, even though they're almost $100,000 below asking price now. She says it actually comps out at $425, pretty dead on. She's like, that they were dead on with. There's two solid comps directly right in their vicinity. One of them was listed for $399, sold for $425. All right. So that's a very recent sale just down the street. There's another one. She didn't give me the list price on it, but she said sold for $525. And then goes in to say fully updated, fully remodeled, fully set to go, $525. The one that they're making their offer on right now, she said it easily needs $50,000 in updates just to kind of bring it up to par, not to call it fully remodeled, but $50,000 just to bring it up to specs, let's say. So here we sit. And Matt, you and I have talked about like the challenges that people have had to overcome with people thinking their home is worth something using like a Zillow platform and going, wait, my property's worth X amount. And listing agents and buyer's agents for years now have had to go, wait, let's talk about the accuracy of all that type of stuff. This is a whole new situation that's coming into the game right now. And I know I've been talking a lot here, Matt, but I'm going to just end it with this. It's interesting how people listen and communicate with AI platforms. And currently right now, we've mentioned it that we have parents, my father-in-law, your dad, been in the hospital. And I've spent a lot of time throwing in, what is this? What is that? What does this mean? If we have all 10 of these things all combined together, what does it mean? And there's a weird side that I listen to AI like I'm listening to a doctor. And I have to remind myself all the time, this is not a doctor. This is not someone who has a medical degree and has seen these things hand-on, put their hands on the patient, touch the patient, and been like, oh, this kind of fits with this and fits with that. This is just AI out there that I'm interpreting like the word of a doctor. And I could easily see somebody going, I need advice. I'm feeling uncomfortable. I'm feeling like we've left something on the table, throwing it in, and it will give you the answers that you're searching for. Matt, you've said this many times. So here we have this information being dumped in. And if I'm looking, like, let's say from a patient side of how are we going to make this patient better? What are the things we should be paying attention to? AI will say, here's what you should be doing to help make them better, like a doctor. If I throw it in going, what is the life expectancy of somebody who's dealing with all this? Is this something that we should be scared about or nervous about? It'll come on and be like, unfortunately, these are the stages of the end of life. And this is what you should be preparing for. By the way, I've seen it all in the last 2 weeks when it comes to that type of stuff. Same thing here. We feel like we underpriced our house. What do you think? Well, matter of fact, did you see the 525 just down the street? Like you guys should have. All right, Matt, I'm done talking.
This is I love this story because I imagine the seller dropping into ChatGPT, all these comps and things and saying, we believe our house is priced too low. So you're already setting the frame for Chat to kind of respond to, oh, you're looking for a reasonable answer that gives you an opportunity to have a
You're
price
so
that's
smart.
higher.
You're right. Like,
Yeah. I mean, and you know, I read this article from a software developer the other day who is kind of, I guess, sounding the alarm, but then as the further you read into it, it was just kind of acknowledging the advancements that are in AI and talking about the latest model of ChatGPT that's not released to the public yet, 5.3. We're on 5.2 right now, which is actually outrageously better than 4.0. And I remember just last year we were on 2.0, right? Lots of hallucinations in 2.0. And now in 5.2, there's not a lot of hallucinations, but even in my macro tracker that I use every single day, it still doesn't add things properly. It will just, oh, we're going to throw in extra water for you. I'm like, I didn't tell you to add water. It's like, oh, oops, sorry, let me pull that out. And so
I love it when it's like, great catch.
Yeah, it's like, oh, you're right, you know? And so if it makes and I think this gets into the cognitive biases that we have as people too, which, you know, we're learning a lot more about too. We're reading Thinking Fast and Slow, which is a fascinating book about how our brains work. And Chat and AI doesn't have those biases, so to speak. It has data points and it has the information that you give it. And, you know, circling back, you mentioned the Zillow Zestimates. And so I just want to share those stats. And we talked about this before. Now, this property may not fall into that because it was actually listed, which I would be curious to what the Zestimate was once it was actually on the market. But when you think about now, the Zestimate is not, it is AI powered in a way, right? In fact, all of these algorithms that are used in the past for these automated price valuations, that was AI. It was software programming that's designed to take in all of the information at any point in time and then come up with an estimate, right? And so that was artificial intelligence and still is. So it's not like things have really changed in that area, so to speak. It's just gotten better. But what does better look like? Well, let's see. Let's go right to Zillow's own website and take a look. Well, so they say, I'm just going to go the national average because it's the easiest thing to look at. Your state and region might be different, but they break it down into two categories: active listing in accuracy and off-market home accuracy. Very important distinction between the two because there's a lot more information you have with an active listing. Of course, it's been most likely given a price opinion from a realtor or a series of realtors. It has a lot more data and information included in the listing because they've input that into the MLS or whatever source is feeding into Zillow, whereas off-market homes really don't have that information. So their accuracy on listed homes nationwide within 5% of the sales price. So think about this, $500,000 home. This is plus or minus $25,000, being in that $50,000 range, right? 5% of the sales price plus or minus 84% of the time, actually 83.95 with a median error of 1.83%. Not bad. But that means that the price is falling outside of that range 16% of the time.
Yep.
Okay, still not terrible. That's like, but those are listed homes. Let's check out the off markets, shall we? This is just absurd.
Which, by the way, this is what most people are looking at and making their
right
decisions off of, and where they're gathering information, the off markets.
Yeah, because people aren't looking at their estimate when they're on the market. They've already had the conversation. They're like thinking about going on the market. Their house is off the market. Like, ooh, this estimate says this. So their accuracy within 5%. So for $500,000 house, this $50,000 price range, 38.69%.
Plus or minus.
Which means over 61% of the homes are selling outside of that range. Within 10% is only 62%, Garrett. I mean, and the median error increases up to 7%, which, okay, Zillow admits, like, hey, we don't have data to come up with accurate pricing. So now, can ChatGPT arguably maybe do better when you give it data? Maybe, but you are then also giving it biased data because you're including your own interpretations, most likely when you're putting it in there. And Garrett, as you said before we started recording, these things cannot touch and feel these spaces. They cannot touch and feel and experience this real estate.
I mean, there are properties you can put online and be like, if I had never been in the house, going by the marketing remarks, it says it's fully updated. I have walked into many homes, brand new construction houses that you walk into and you're like, yeah, it's new, but Matt, you went through this. Matt bought a house and it was brand new and had to rip out your entire master bathroom floor. You had to redo the siding around one of the sides of the house. You had to do all kinds of stuff because, yes, it was brand new, but there were things that were done wrong. And I think in like a resale type house, you can put fully updated, you can write in whatever you want. And if it's taking that information and going like, oh, well, at face value says it's been redone, you walk into that house and the tiles are laid in correctly, or maybe the grout's not finished perfectly in certain areas, or maybe all of a sudden the you can tell where all the patchwork's been done and all the walls, and like, yeah, it's drywall and yes, it's painted, but like there's a lot of things that need to be fixed here to make this fully updated and fully brought up to spec. So I think like AI is never going to get their hands on that stuff. It's like it can give me the value of a collector car and be like, if I had a 1965 Mustang GT Fastback, what would be the range of value? And what if it was in perfect condition? Great. Until I go and sit in that car, I start it up, I listen to how it runs, listen to all the noises that are happening, shift it to feel like what's happening in the transmission. I can walk around and look at the paint and measure the paint myself. The range of value is vastly different. I mean, we're talking crazy difference here. And the hardest part I have with the AI right now around this, Matt, is that we listen to it like it's gospel. We listen to it like it knows, and it's like, thank God I asked it because it gave me information that I just was missing. And so often I have been led astray by it lately. And the person who shared this with me is somebody that I felt was enjoying AI. She wants to murder it right now. She's so mad. She's like, I am just spreading hate around everywhere right now for what AI has done in this situation that literally has created a situation that her clients are stuck in this mess right now. Now, I do think, I'm pretty sure that what we're going to watch happen, this house is now at 525. These poor sellers are going to sit there because everyone's going like, 525, not touching it. And that's why I told her, I'm like, put your offer in at 430 and let it sit. Let it be there, because there's a very good chance all those other offers got blown out. All those other buyers are just like, I'm not playing that game. And all of a sudden, this seller is going to be like, well, we have this offer on the table and maybe we should talk to them and see where we can go with this. But man, the buyers are the ones that actually set the value of a marketplace. And when you've got, and this is to all you sellers out there who might run into this with your clients, when you've got a lot of activity and people are circling around and there's a feeding frenzy around the house, that is not the moment to be like, what did we do wrong? You probably did everything right. You've got everybody there and you have to set your clients up properly so they understand we did everything right. Like, this is amazing. Let them fight over it. Let them all go. I want to have my kid have this experience of living. I want to have my loved ones experience this wonderful place. I'm not going to let them have it. Let them fight it out. Let them go for it, because you've created this marketplace here. But to rip it out from underneath everybody, oh, I wish them the best. And by the time this goes live,
they didn't even get all the offers in yet either. It was like, you could counter with 525 if you really think it's worth that. Like, the strategy blows my mind.
Well, and then you from listening a little bit to what she's experiencing with the listing agent on this side, there's probably I feel for him. The way she sounded was like he almost didn't know where to go with this. Like they because they have a resource that they really trust, which is this whole thing of ChatGPT that a lot of us have just given up a lot of control to. A lot of people have said, Matt, I think AI is going to make us dumber. This is one of those situations that, like, who are you? Are you using critical thinking here for yourself, or are you just giving up decision-making ability to something over here? Now that's where I'm finding AI has been the biggest problem, is when people give up the creative ability to make decisions using AI. It's one thing to gather data. It's another thing to gather information. But when you say, what should we do, or what is the best route here, and then you take it and run with that, that is something that I think is we're going to watch more and more here is going to come back and bite us. And I don't care if it's what color you should paint your house, to, what it is, a medical decision you should make for a family member that you love. Be very careful giving up the decision-making ability. And that's what these guys did. They just threw it in, and now they got a decision made for them, and they're probably going to regret it.
Yeah. Or they're going to just end up with a different emotional experience with it all around. Like, oh, we left something on the table. And I think this it highlights something that we need to pay attention to in the industry is these tools are becoming utilized more and more by people every single day. And that means that you should be using them too, to understand how they operate so that you can counter a conversation that comes around like that, right? Because if I'm that listing agent and he may have, I don't know him, I don't know what he did, but I'd be like, I'm going to throw this stuff into AI and see if I get the same result. And you're probably going to get something different and just say, hey, look, I got a different result, right? Which means I'm not sure we should trust this for making this decision. Sure, we can use it to help us with understanding and research and other things, because at best, a AI tool is probably at this point in time going to go to the average of whatever information that it could find and how it's being prompted, right? Using that information as well. And so everything needs to be directed by somebody. And if someone is biased in the direction of something, and we see this in statistical studies all the time too, right? Like if I wanted you to be excited about Zillow's accuracy, I'd be like, yeah, 84% of the time they're within 5%. You'd be like, oh, that's not so bad. But if I turn it around the other way and said, oh, man, over 16% of the time, they're never within 5%. Be like, oh, that doesn't sound so good. It's the same statistic, right? Yeah. But even when you feed that into AI, it'll detect that kind of direction that you're going and then probably bias the answer toward that unless you give it instructions to not do that. And so part of more and more people using the tool is I think more and more people are not going to use it effectively to their own advantage, Garrett. And this is where like we need to know what consumers are doing, right? It's kind of like when Zillow came about. Everybody was all up in arms. They found a solution to a consumer problem of viewing properties online, and they did it outrageously well. And everyone's like, oh, this is so tough. What most agents didn't do was go and use it to see what it's like, to understand it. Instead, they're like, no, you need to go on our website. And I remember this because in the 2010s, everyone's like, oh, we're going to have searchability on our website. We're going to have an app. It's going to be so cool. And I remember testing several of these apps, Garrett, and they were terrible. Yeah. I was like, I'm not going to send a client to use this. Like, why would I do that? I'm going to continue to use my MLS alerts. Oh, and the MLS that we had was terrible. I'm going to continue to use that. And if they go on Zillow and send me Zillows, like, fine. Like, that's a way better experience than this app over here.
Well, and when I look at like the seller again, there's an interesting thing of when the expert says, and there are so many studies, Matt, of a doctor walking into somebody's room and they're like, you have 6 months to live. And that person will literally live to the day 6 months later. Like there's a lot of when the expert says, and people just kind of follow suit with that. And what these guys now have is what they predict or they perceive as an expert that says 525. They might be so damaged as of right now that it doesn't matter what offer comes in on the table, doesn't matter what buyer wants to be able to buy it. Their brain now is locked on to 525. And
they anchor. It creates a new anchor.
And they are stuck. And I will be very curious when we circle back around on this, we gather more data as we kind of watch this play out, because I mean, we'll be so wrong if it sells for 550. If it goes back and we're like, this episode's live and we're like, well, It actually.
But who's who's to say maybe it wouldn't have at 425?
And that's the crazy thing. It's like, well, who knows how this would have played out? And we'll have more data. This story will have an end to it. We will be able to circle back around. But the other side, again, I was like, an expert in their perceived eyes has now said it's worth 525. And when somebody gets that type of information, they lock onto it, and now all of a sudden they could potentially be homeowners for the next 2 years going, I'm not leaving until I can get 525. Like that is what we're going to get because I know it's worth that. And it might take a lot of repair work. And I think this is where our jobs, I'm not a licensed realtor, your guys' jobs out there is that we have to educate people up front early on about what you're going to run into, what tools are at your personal fingertips, how to use them, how to interpret that data, and start to educate them around that. Because if you don't get ahead of it, it will be one of those things that now it's an anchor and they've seen it. An expert has told them, they perceived it as an expert at that moment in time. And it's very hard to go, yeah, but after the fact. But beforehand, you can have those types of conversations. This is the time to start having them now. People didn't realize that with Zillow, Matt, and there's a lot of people going, how do we do this with Zillow? Like, how do we get ahead of it? They're seeing these, when you do your market impact report, include the Zillow with it to be like, you might have seen this out here, or maybe you haven't seen it yet. These are all the different price valuations that you can find online. Don't try to hide it. Don't try to get around it, but put it right there. I would
explain what it is and what it means.
This is going to be a great example, and you'll be able to find them in your marketplaces. Do one on a property. Do one on one that you know is going to be coming on the market. Have AI run a whole report on it, and then make sure you delete it so that's out of its search area, because if you leave it in there, it'll contaminate future stuff. And then when it goes on the market, use the comps, run the whole thing again, and see how different the interpretations are of what this property is. Lead into it with an idea of, is this price too low or is it priced too high? Lead into it is, are we leaving money on the table or, are we overpriced? Just lead it a little bit too and see what drastic directions it goes. But I'm going to encourage you, if you do this, you have to delete the searches that you have in the past, because it will always go and grab that data out of there. Same thing with my father-in-law. Every single time I put in a new thing, and I'm just like going like, well, what if I have a family member who's dealing with this? It goes, if you're talking about your father-in-law from a search that I had 3 weeks ago, he's dealing with all these things, and this is why you need to be concerned. I wasn't. I was actually trying to deal with something else. I was just trying to figure out why I have heartburn right now.
I just wanted to figure out how to cure my stubbed toe. That's all.
Yes. Why are you putting all this stuff on me? But that's the thing. You do need to clean out that history if you're going to do something like this, because it's amazing what it stores as data and stores as. So if you're doing hypotheticals, you got to be careful, because it will hold those hypotheticals in there as real searches.
Well, this is what's interesting about like the algorithm versus having AI do this, because at least the algorithms are consistent in how they do their measuring, because there is a strict set of data points that they're collecting. And then the algorithm then comes up with, using those data points, what this estimate is. And I've seen properties where this estimate is not there because we don't have enough data. Most of the time, things like ChatGPT are going to give you an answer no matter what. They're going to be like, well, here's the answer. If you ask it for an answer, it's going to give you the answer and then suggest if you want to keep going, right? It's just going to keep the conversation going, because that's what it's designed to do as a language learning model. And on the memory side, like, it's designed to keep that memory, and it'll always keep it unless you obviously instruct it in certain ways. And, we're going to be probably coming back to a lot of the AI conversations as new develops. I feel like there was like this pause for about 6 months or so, Garrett, and just kind of a lot of AI stuff, because people started using the basic models now. But now that things have gotten so advanced, there's now some pretty big leaps and stuff. So we're going to talk about that.
But I also think people's questioning, where when it first came out, it was just like, everything it did was just amazing. And did you see this? And did you see this? And did you see, like, everybody wanted to share and talk about it. And I think we kind of came into a spot where a lot of people got burned by it. I saw people throwing in all their HOAs to say, hey, I just want to take this huge HOA and just put it into bullet points for my client so they just know what they're looking at. And then they thought it was perfect, and they handed it over going like, look, I summarized this all for you. And then they realized there was really important stuff that was missing from it, that wasn't put into the summarized version of it. And then all of a sudden it was like, well, shit, I can't use that anymore. Like,
Yeah.
That was a great tool, but I'm not giving that to my clients anymore.
It goes into like, it's not seeing exactly what you're seeing, right? Particularly when it comes to experiential things. And you need to use your own intuitive nature, like back to using my macro mode thing for tracking my nutrition, which I love doing. It's great. But like, I also will see like, I don't think you calculated that property. Like put in a nutrition label once, it remembers it. Then all of a sudden one day I'm like, wait, that's not what the nutrition label said. Here is that again. So you have to be vigilant. And I think this just goes into general how we operate. And I feel like culturally we've been looking for the easy way out. And what we've learned in thinking fast and slow is like your brain is lazy. It's looking like your computer driven, slow thinking brain that does all the analytical work is lazy. It's going to look for an easy answer. And we have to be vigilant in making sure that we don't default to that laziness, particularly with a tool like AI. And I think if you're educating yourself, because your clients are going to use it. And if you have a client who goes and says, well, I'm going to put this stuff in, particularly if you then have buyers, because I could see this going the other direction, Garrett, of a buyer saying, well, the list price is $425, but we did some extensive conversations with ChatGPT and determined that we should offer $380. And it's like, oh no, like we're not going to get it. You guys really want this house and you're just going to rely on ChatGPT to make your offer, which it's going to get better. But if you don't know how to use it to have the conversation as to why, this goes back to the algorithms. Why is the estimates so inaccurate? Oh, well, even if you just spent 3 minutes reading their own explanation of their estimates, you now have the information to share with your clients of this is why it's not super accurate. And they go, oh, okay, that makes sense. But it does make for a good starting point for our conversation. Oh, fantastic. Right. And that's where if we don't pay attention to it, we're going to end up in a situation like the seller is in, where all of a sudden you just throw it up $100,000 more after you had all this interest of people. And it will be interesting to see how many of those offers just don't come in at this point.
Well, I go back and I'm blown away by AI. I use it so many times a day. I jump in and it will create something for me to help me dream. I'll have it create, I used it a while back here where I put my race car into it and I'm like, I need a new livery. I need a new design for the paint scheme of the car. And it was awesome. And it made me think outside the box of things I wasn't even going like, whoa, we could do that. It could be that way. But when you have it start making decisions for you, this is where I'm finding people are getting led in really strange directions. And this is where I find a lot of people are, and it's an easy thing to do, going like, I'm stuck and I don't know what decision to make. And you go, I need help. And it will literally take you down the route of here's what I feel like you should be doing. That's the stuff you have to be very, very, very careful about, because it's not in your environment. It's not hands-on in any of this stuff. And Matt, I'm actually going to play with this just for fun, because we have my mother and father-in-law's property, which is just in the town next door to us. It's an area that's probably very inaccurate for Zillow. I'd be curious to look it up. It's a little town called Palisadro. It's 3,500 people, and it's a whole bunch of ranch areas. Their property is 116 acres, got a little good-sized ranch house on it. And I'm going to play around with it and be like, let's approach this property from a couple different angles of what the real value is of it. Because like, if I approach it as like, I'm a rancher and I have 500 head of cattle and I'm thinking about, using this property, like what would the value of this property be for me? And I'm going to also approach it from another angle and just see what different types of evaluations it'll give me of what that property's worth to somebody like me of value. We can also approach it from the sell side and be like, I've used the property for all this and I've been able to run a business off it and have it generate money. And like, what is the value of this property compared to, I'm not using any of it. I got to maintain this damn thing. It's just extra work. I got to hire all these crews to come on and clear the property all the time and do burn piles. what is the value of this thing to me, and just hit it from a whole bunch of different angles and see where it goes. So I'll experiment. I'm going to have some fun with this.
Yeah. Yeah, it's going to be interesting because while you're talking, I was like, I wonder if I just like ask it to give the value of my property, what's it going to say? And I'll compare that to this estimate. And it is doing a detailed analysis on here. It's even showing comps. It's pulling it right now. And
that's an interesting thing though, Matt. Like how do you have it set up? Do you have it set for an instant search? Do you have it set for like,
I have it on auto, decide how to think. So it did do some thinking. It thought for 52 seconds. And, my wife would like the number that it's producing. And I compare that to this estimate. The difference is $75,000 between ChatGPT's estimate and Zillow's estimate. And I would probably say, where knowing the neighborhood, and I do a market impact report for myself every so often, it's probably somewhere in the middle of those, probably closer to the Zestimate. But the way it comes up with these numbers, it's like, oh, that maybe is not so far off. I mean, $75,000 is a lot of money, so it's a big range. But when you think about strategy and how you're going to market a property, if I went with the ChatGPT number, I would probably see 0 showings, even though it might be close to a range, just the way that things are being launched. So, interesting how it comes out, but this was actually relatively impressive with it. And I think this is why agents need to go and play with it and understand it, because this is giving it no information. But if you prompt it, if I threw in a bunch of comps and said, hey, we think it's listed too low, I guarantee that number comes out different. So
yeah, it's funny is I just threw mine in just for fun, and it is interesting what it pulled up. Now, again, I have it set on instant right now, so it didn't go and do an in-depth report on this, but the range is about $120,000, kind of all over.
A lot of money.
It's a lot. It's a lot of money. I'm going to ask you one more question.
Mine will be a little bit more accurate than yours, just based on the fact that I live in a new home community and my house was built 3 years ago, right? And there's been some good turnover on new homes, same models and things like that. Your home was built in the 90s, which is going to not have as much information that's up to date on it, right? And so you have to factor that in too, right? A lot of people think, oh, I'll just take it as like every single situation is unique, because if I pulled a property that was outside of this community, that's maybe an older home, it would probably be more inaccurate, right? But it did actually recognize the different estimates that are out there on Zillow and Redfin as well, and pulled those numbers into its evaluation. Whereas if you give it comps and you bias to one or the other, it's gonna weight that, right?
Well, and I think the challenge is that there are people that will always latch on to the highest number because it's hopeful. It's like you see it and you're like, okay, yeah, I get it that it gave me this low and it gave me this high, but what if we got the high? It's actually something that it's put me in that range. Like, why don't we go for it? Which the range on this is even bigger than that. I said, well, what if I wanted, I do love this, Matt. I said, what if I wanted an exact value for my house? And number one thing, it says a local real estate agent's comparative market analysis is going to be your best way of actually knowing what your home is worth.
That's cool.
And but then it said a licensed appraiser will give you an official lender ready value, which I thought was interesting. Didn't say market value, lender value. But still, I mean, one of these prices has an 8 in front of it and one of it has a 5 in front of it. Like that's the swing that I'm dealing with right now.
Well, I think this was fun to do as an exercise here to highlight. Getting in and using these things is important to help you understand how your clients might be looking at it, because I do think that gone are going to be the days of someone saying, well, my Zestimate says this. And while we should still focus on understanding that as agents and how to counteract that, the new thing is going to be, well, ChatGPT told me this. And we don't know how they prompted, because if you just say, hey, give me an estimate of my house, which is essentially what I did, no surprise, it went and looked at the automated value metrics that are out there and came up with, looked at a few solds and kind of came up with an estimate, which actually is probably more reasonable than if I said, well, my house is special. Because it's mine, for one. I painted it a different color inside. We did some trim stuff and, we put a fence around it. That cost us some money. And
trees.
I'm looking to get all my money out of it. And all of this, and that, it's going to then all of a sudden start to be biased. So it's going to come up with a different thing than what the algorithms are. And we need to be prepared to have those conversations with sellers and buyers so that when they use these tools and they get information, how we can help guide them based on how they did it, right? Not to necessarily, and I think this is the approach we want to avoid by saying, well, Garrett, you're wrong. Don't use that. That's bad information for you because now you're just putting up a block between that relationship. Instead, be curious. Oh, interesting. Well, tell me how you prompted the tool. What did you say and how did that conversation go? Would you mind sharing it with me so I can take a look at it to see what type of information that was pulling out so that we can have a better discussion around what information it's utilizing.
Well, if you
that would be a better approach.
If you choose to go do the research and have some fun with it, like this now turns into marketing stuff you can put out. You can educate your clients and say, look, I know a lot of you are starting to use ChatGPT or AI tools and whatnot. And these are things you just need to be aware of. And here's like what the plus or minus that Zillow's at. Here's what we saw with the property over here that just, I did this information right before the property went on the market. Here's what happened when it went on the market. Here's what it actually sold for. But here's what AI was saying this property was potentially worth. Like, have some fun. You have to do the research. And if you personally have your hands on the research, it's not something you just heard. It's not something you saw. It's not something you learned at a conference where you're at. It's something you really did on a real property here in town. And you can do a Instagram video on that. You can do a Facebook video on that. You can go to YouTube and say, like, I'm here to educate you guys on what's going on. That's how you become an expert for people, not telling them that tool's broken, you can't believe in it, don't use it. Yes. Nope, that doesn't work.
Yes. Oh, 100%. 100%. And I'll last point I'll make on this, Garrett, is be careful with any tools just because real estate is not a commodity in the way it transacts in the real world. We measure it and we analyze it and we statisticize it based on it being a commodity, but it is not, because all it takes is one person with a strong emotion that day to be like, this is the house. And I remember this one client in particular, I knew she was going to love this house and I knew that they were going to pay the price that the house was listed at because I'm like, I think she's going to fall in love with it. Literally walked in the front door and was like, great, let's write the contract. I'm like, do you want to see the rest of the house? Right? That's what emotion can do. Right. And we have to make sure that we understand that, because if we start to then default to just running data and being statistical about it and saying, well, real estate's a commodity, it's not when it comes down to those buyers and sellers. The emotion is weighted way more and we cannot predict that. And therefore, strategy is very important. And you can use tools to help you devise the strategy, but don't default to it because then you'll miss out on the value that you bring.
Well, and what you were saying is tools. And I think all these are tools that we need to understand and we need to know how to use. And there's a lot of times, and I've used this on past podcasts, that like when you enter into somebody's workshop and then you go pick up a tool, you can look at a tool sometimes going, what the hell is this used for? Like, why would you use this? And you can sit there and try to use it for something that you think its intended purposes are for. And let's just use AI as a information gathering, critical thinking, helping you ask better questions, learn more, maybe look at things from a different angle. Not a decision maker, though. And if you take that part of the tool out of it and say, look, understand this is not a decision maker for you. It's a gathering information, learning about what's going on. It's the difference of having a hammer and trying to use it as a screwdriver, or vice versa, having a screwdriver and trying to use that as a hammer. I can sit there and pound away on a nail until somebody goes, no, that's not how that tool is used. You're going to have much more success with it if you try to use that on a screw, and it's going to be awesome. Both will hold pieces of wood together. Both will, can be used in a similar fashion. But the tool is used differently. And I think that's how we have to educate people here, is that we have all these tools at our fingertips right now. I'm going to show you how to use them the best as a homeowner so that you're getting the best out of them. And then some of them we're going to use when we go to sell your house. Some of them we're going to take with a grain of salt. And that's just because that's not how that tool's meant to be used.
Yeah. Arguably, you could probably use a screwdriver better to hammer a nail than you could use a hammer to try to screw a screw.
100%. Yes. You are correct, Matt.
You could kind of,
So you're saying that screwdriver is more of a useful tool?
Yeah. Yeah. If you had to choose one, I'd probably take the
multi-purpose.
screwdriver.
Multi-purpose. That's how I'm going to, we should rewrite the marketing for a screwdriver. Not only.
If you could only choose one, we're not going to take the hammer. Let's be honest.
Yeah, if you only have one pocket and you're going to take a tool with you, take the screwdriver.
Well, this has been fun, Garrett, and we will give an update on this at some point too, on what actually transpired to kind of circle back. But it was important enough for us to bring up to the attention today.
Yeah, man, I'm happy we got to go down through this. This was super fun. So for all of you out there joining us in this world, thank you for joining. Thank you for tuning in. You can find us on YouTube. You can find us on Apple, Spotify. You're probably listening on one of those. Listen, write comments, engage with us on there. We love communicating with you. And
leave reviews on those platforms. If you guys get value, leave reviews on
please.
Spotify or podcast, Apple, wherever you can leave reviews.
Yeah, we're low. We need some reviews, Matt. We got people that listen to us.
We're going to read them out again. We're going to start reading them again. You guys give reviews. We'll start reading them. We did that with our prior podcast, and it's fun. Like, we love reading them and reading them out loud and giving people credit. So do that.
All right, everybody. Thank you so much. We'll be back soon. Enjoy your day.
Bye.